Before we get into today's episode, gotta give a big shout out to Open Fortune. Are you looking for a unique way to reach your audience? Open Fortune offers an innovative approach to advertising by placing your brand message inside fortune cookies. Yep, you heard me, fortune cookies, reaching 99% of US zip codes through a network of over 47,000 restaurants. It's a memorable and effective way to connect with your consumers at a moment when they're most receptive. Thank you, Open Fortune, for making today's episode possible. All right. I'm really excited for this one, and I'll say it. I'm excited to end my Friday with this one. Welcome to CMO Weekly, the podcast where we celebrate the leaders shaping the future of marketing and branding. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Erin Newkirk, a visionary marketer with an impressive track record of building brands that truly resonate. As the Chief Brand and Marketing Officer at Caribou Coffee, Erin has spent nearly 5 years infusing the brand with purpose, sustainability, and authenticity. Under her leadership, Caribou Coffee has solidified its position as a global leader in premium coffee while staying true to its commitment to 100% Rainforest Alliance certified coffees and clean label ingredients. Erin's team continues to elevate the Caribou experience across all channels, making it a household name for coffee lovers worldwide. But Erin's expertise doesn't stop at coffee. From founding Red Stamp, a groundbreaking social commerce platform, to serving as CMO at Bright Health and holding senior roles at General Mills, Erin has consistently driven innovation, connection, and growth. So today, we're excited to join by Erin. Erin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, you guys. Happy to be here.
Yeah, totally. No, I'm so stoked to have you. I know we had a couple weeks before we get this one planned. So like I said, just excited to have you. I got to ask, just from the jump, right? When you were growing up, what was your dream role? I know it wasn't CMO of Caribou Coffee, even though it is a pretty good gig. But yeah, what was little Erin like?
Little Erin. I did drink coffee at kind of a young age, but not probably as little as you want to take it here. High school age. It was pretty edgy and cool to like walk into, a class with a cup of coffee in the morning. But
yeah.
Before all of that, it's actually funny that you asked that question, David, because this is a little joke in my family. My father was a writer. He worked in the ad agency world. And so when I was younger, I told him I also wanted to be a writer. And he thought, oh my gosh, it's amazing, right? You want to be a writer, you want to take after your dad. And what I meant is I actually just want to handwrite things because it's really fun to actually write and handwrite. So he was a little disappointed, but also took that as an opportunity to sell me on what else that could mean in the world. And so I fell in love with journalism and writing both ways, all the ways. And now I get to actually blend that creativity as someone in marketing. So it's pretty fun.
Sure. And was there a brand growing up that really resonated with you, or your father?
Yes. Well, he was the vice president creative director on Lincoln Mercury. So we were a car family for sure. So I think he probably would go that route if he were still with us. But for me, I was really about ice cream. I loved ice cream, all the different kinds. Some of my earliest memories were walking to 31 Baskin Robbins when we were in California. And then I got to meet Stroh's ice cream growing up for the rest of my childhood in Detroit. So I like to seek out all the different places like Sanders, if you know Sanders Hot Fudge and that whole legacy in Michigan. I was pretty into all things ice cream. I was definitely a brand loyalist and advocate for the local ones.
It's hard not to be. But when did you realize kind of what marketing was, and that, you might be passionate about it or wanting to dip your toes in?
Yes. So growing up, moving on from the ice cream days, when I was in college and studying journalism, I started to take a few advertising classes because I was lucky enough to go to a college where there was a journalism school. And so I dabbled in some of the advertising pieces and realized quickly that I probably wasn't quite creative enough to go into the agency world, especially, as I said before, growing up with an agency dad. But I knew that I was just nerdy enough.
Imposter syndrome right there.
A little imposter syndrome, but I knew I was nerdy enough to be able to go into the business side. So, for me, I think that's where I really fell in love with the idea of marketing. And when I graduated from college, I was able to secure a job at a time where actually employment was a rough game. It was in the mid 90s, and I was able to network my way into a job. So use some of my connections that I had learned about in college and land an entry level job where I did all the things. It was one of those types of job that was with Kaplan Educational Centers. And it was through providing people with the tapes that they needed to study for the tests that they wanted that I started to really see how important the full experience was of the customer. At this point, it was student. And then I started to learn, okay, that's really what marketing is. It really focuses on the who. And it starts from the very first time they hear about your service, but it really extends all the way through to when they recommend and advocate for your brand. And so it was really through learning and hands-on work at something that I thought might be, a 6-month job that I really fell in love with marketing.
Yeah, I often think with that first job, right? There's obviously the work you're doing that is super important and to learn, but also the people alongside you, right? I think some people, I have a theory that some people have like work trauma, but a lot of the time, or not a theory, people have work trauma. However, when I ask people about their work trauma, it usually is like comes from their first couple years, right? Not like something that happened when they were in their 30s or 40s. I'm not going to ask about that, but I was curious if you had any good leaders, but I think it works in the opposite way too, where if you have somebody who's very, very good and that can help you, they can help you set your career. I had somebody like that in my life, but I'm curious if there's somebody like that in yours.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. So I was fortunate enough to work for someone who's a dear friend now, but at the time was Chief Marketing Officer, General Mills, Mark Addix. And he's retired, and I would use air quotes if we were doing this, on camera for everyone. I mean, retired as in he does about 1 million other things, just not for one employer anymore. But he really showed me the way when it came to how to blend curiosity and creativity with performance-based marketing. And he was doing it, back before any of us were really doing performance-based marketing. So I have to give a shout out to Mark. And he was just such a warm and welcoming leader, always running late. So we would joke with him about that. But he was really an outstanding mentor and still is today.
That's awesome. You worked specifically in cereal at General Mills, correct?
I did.
Oh my gosh, I have such a love for General Mills cereal. One, I just happen to love cereal. But two, I'm from Buffalo, and there is a General Mills factory in Buffalo.
Yep, sure.
And so we all have T-shirts and things that say "My city smells like Cheerios," because that's where Cheerios are made, and you can actually smell it. So if you're driving by the factory and you open your window, the entire place smells like Cheerios. It's the best.
So Haley, I worked on Cheerios, and it's really cool to go and look at how Cheerios are made. There's this huge machine. Did you go into the plant at all?
No, I've never been inside. Just smelling the outside.
It really is actually quite an amazing feat, because I think most people, when they think of cereal or they think of Cheerios, they don't really know the full attention and the scope that goes into the work. But
sure,
because Cheerios is such a first finger food and it's so important, making sure that the O's are perfect and the right sized and right size for littles as well as, bigs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really cool. Yeah. It was a great place. I worked on Cheerios. I was lucky enough to work on Cheerios. It was kind of like, oh, the brand.
Well, and they have some iconic marketing, like everybody remembers the heart health that went along with Cheerios. Were you part of any of that original messaging?
I was part of the women's heart health with a flanker, Berry Burst Cheerios. So we really focused on female heart health for the very first time. It was back in the day when, all the marketing dollars that was geared towards women was going towards breast cancer, still obviously a very important initiative, but very little was being talked about heart health and how significant it is for females, and how very little research was done on heart health. So I got to do some really amazing things with the Red Dress campaign and all of the work around women's heart health.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, gosh, it's so important too. It's one of the leading causes of women's death in the country. It's like, mind blowing that wouldn't have been something that was just normal, but wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm curious, you ended up spending 7 years at General Mills, right?
Yes.
Maybe a little bit more. What about it made it such a special place? And what was one thing that you came away with a career lesson from?
From a marketing perspective, it was a dream job. I mean, you got to work on brands like Cheerios. I worked on Old El Paso. I worked on Pillsbury. I worked on Nature Valley. I mean, these brands, right? Like they're amazing. And to be at the center of all of that, working with R&D and ops and, insights and working with agencies to bring the brands to life. It was amazing. When I think about brands and I think about the meaning of brands, I always talk about it, brands as being like this vessel of meaning, right? And I think at General Mills, you couldn't walk down the hallway without running into some sort of deep, meaningful brand. So that was amazing. The only thing that trumped it were the people. I definitely lucked out. And I still actually talk to many of the people that I worked with at General Mills today. At the beginning of my career, I mean, you can't help but not, because these folks are CEOs of big companies and CMOs of, other big companies. Mm-hmm. And then there's also a lot of really interesting entrepreneurial success that's come out of General Mills. So yeah, it was a very formative experience. And, I get asked a lot, especially with new grads, hey, what do you think? Should I go work at a big company? Can I start out in a small company? Like, what do you think? Because I've done all of the above. And, obviously everyone's going to determine their own path, and you got to follow your head and your heart and your gut, with all of it. But I will never regret starting in a company like General Mills and learning how to do marketing at a company like that. It was amazing.
Do you think that gives you a bit of a crash course into marketing when you start so big?
Sure.
Sure. It's just, there's everything you could possibly learn. You kind of have to just dive in super quickly and sink or swim type of thing. And then you learn. I just feel like you learn so quickly to do it that way.
Definitely. And the bigger companies have, I think, really good tracks for how to do that. There's lots of different ways in, which definitely helps. But I mean, I work 7 days a week, easy, on these bigger brands, because there was always something to be done or always something to be learned. And I think that it wasn't until having an MBA really helped, because I had some basic knowledge of, starting in a company like that. But yeah, it's a crash course. You definitely swim in it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I bet. And you end up, like Haley was saying, you got this crash course, and then you go from a huge company, General Mills, to starting your own, and dipping your toe into entrepreneurship. What was Red Stamp, and what was the goal, and what paper napkin idea behind it? And what did that journey have in store for you?
Yes. Well, for me, I mean, there's always been something about understanding needs, wants, dreams, and jobs to do, right, of every individual. That's one of the courses that I learned during the crash courses, Haley, at General Mills. So when I decided it was really like almost called to go do something else, and it was really around making relationships stronger. At the time, I had a lot of family stuff going on. Actually, my dad reappears in this moment to need help in some of healthcare needs. And I had a child, and, my husband had a big job. And so we're trying to make it all work. And so at the time, the way that I worked that flexibility into my workday was to start my own company, which is Red Stamp. And knowing where I was at in that stage of life, and the fact that there was a lot of technology that was being built and platforms that were being built, but nothing really that served the chief household officer, the person who was supposed to remember all the important dates and make sure people felt celebrated and loved and thanked. And it was before smartphones, believe it or not, before social media really took hold. So that was what Red Stamp was all about, was mission-based, in the sense it was just making relationships stronger. And what was interesting is, in the period of time from launch to when we sold it 10 years later, so much had changed in the technology space. We went from a website where we would take people's important dates and help them remember, sell them cards, or handwrite and send for them, which we had a lot of executive women at the time who were constantly on airplanes without a stamp, but wanted to make sure that their nieces and nephews and grandparents, knew how much they were loved. And so it was really interesting to sort of blend all of these need states, right, together. And then as technology matured, we were able to then mature the platforms. We went to mobile first. And that was another interesting piece, where all of a sudden it wasn't just about handwriting and sending cards for people. It was about letting people get on their phones, type in the message, and then hit send. And then we would actually produce a paper card in return. So it was a really interesting time to be in business, and really speaks to, again, the love of marketing, of understanding who your consumer is, and, getting back to like a strong mission that can transcend the platforms, in the process,
Totally.
into addressing a real need.
And I want to get into Caribou, but I'm curious because you have a different background than a lot of CMOs that I work with, which keeps me excited too, because I have an entrepreneurial background as well. And I feel like a lot of the CMOs today, like they don't have much entrepreneurial experience, right? You then founded another company, right? So you have 10 plus years in entrepreneurship, and you live the last like 15, right? But what about the Caribou job felt right for you, but also for them, right? You weren't the stereotypical CMO that they were going to bring in. And why did you solve their pain points for that? And what were they looking for?
Oh, it's such a good question, because it really, you really hit on something there. I'm definitely, I don't have that traditional background. I have some of the traditional learning of what it takes to, manage a brand. But I was not planning on going back to corporate America. And, as I always say, Caribou is just corporate enough to be corporate America, but we still are very purpose driven. And that was really important to me as well. And important, to your point, for them to find a marketer who really understood how important a mission and insights are into the overall experience. And then also having that operating experience, being the entrepreneur that was the CEO, the CFO, the COO, and the CMO, and all the things all rolled in together, was important as well. So I was introduced to our CEO, John Butcher, it was 2019, by a mutual friend, and he was looking for a head of marketing, and we had coffee. True story. We just, sat down and had coffee. And 3 hours later, his admin came over to find John, because we were just engrossed in this, storytelling of how important brands are, and how much meaning there is in the Caribou brand, and what they were looking for in terms of, head of marketing. And I was fortunate enough to work with a team that had a lot of the logistics down on the retail side, because that's it, especially being in this industry and QSR in general, and then the coffee, house segment, that's a really important piece. So we had really honest conversations about, well, what would it mean if I didn't come to the table with that kind of experience? But at the time, John, really believed and still does in the fact that our brand is just best in class. And if you look at our NPS score and you look at our advocacy, it's off the charts. So knowing that is a very fragile asset, really, right? How do you bring that forward and then build the rest around it?
Well, it seems like too, Caribou has core values: support one another, take ownership, make fun happen, serve with love, and be yourself. And so it feels like having that transparent conversation and being able to just be yourself and bring, what you bring to the table, and they take it and accept it, or it's not a fit, that feels like it aligns with, Caribou Coffee and the business.
Yes. Yeah. And that was one of the reasons that it was so appealing, right, to me too, because it's core values first, and we hire in core values. We work on the core values, and it all ladders up to our purpose statement, which is all about creating day-making experiences that spark chain reactions of good. We don't just say that, like I can say it to you guys, but we actually live it, So how do we create these day-making experiences for our team, for our guests, and for our communities? We take it really seriously.
Was there a core value that stuck out to you the most when you first joined, and has it since maybe shifted to a different core value once you've gotten to know the brand?
Good question. Serve with love was always a really big deal for me. That's what got me. Yeah. But all of them now are so important, and we think about them a lot, actually, and talk about them a lot. I think be yourself in this day and age is probably where I sort of gravitate towards these days, because what does that mean, right? Be yourself and serve with love. Yes, you want to be yourself. At the same time, as you're moving forward, as you're taking ownership, as you're serving with love, how do you be yourself in the context of this complicated world that we find ourselves in? And so these are the kinds of conversations, that I get to have, that we have as a team and with our guests. And I think it just makes us more three-dimensional and really stand out in the marketplace.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and you know your consumer so well. It is the type of person that wants to have a purpose behind a simple everyday act, right? Like we have so many choices for coffee every day. And there are plenty of companies that don't care about anything other than you drinking the coffee. And so being able to offer somebody not only a really great cup of coffee, but, you know, a whole, like you said, mission behind buying this brand. It's a really cool, it's really cool to be a part of that community.
It is. It is. And there's the great thing is like you can find a coffee shop that fits your personality, right? Ours happens to be, hey, if you want to come in and feel like you belong somewhere and you really want to have a barista and a general manager know your name and your order, you come to a Caribou because that's the experience that you get.
Yeah. How do you continue to, work on changing the marketing and keeping it fresh and updated when essentially it is, the same product, but maybe we're changing the flavors every year, or the holiday changes some of the offerings? How do you continue to keep that fresh and have fun doing something like that feels like maybe it's not, the world's biggest changes every year?
Yes. Great question. I mean, the more tactical side of that, I would say, is have an amazing product innovation and product team, which we do.
Sure.
I have to give them just so much credit because of how they innovate within coffee. Like I feel like we have never ending, really exciting limited time offerings to talk about, and changes to the platform. This space in general has gotten so big because it's as coffee consumption has changed from the hot coffee that you get when we used to get like the lattes and the mochas, which we still sell a lot of. But it's gone to just so many different areas around energy, right? Like looking at energy as the need state. So energy drinks and shakers, iced drinks have their moment for sure, where all of a sudden you're able to create some really interesting flavor combinations that, not only meet you at where you're at with your functional needs, but also your emotional need of needing a little bit of space and grace to give yourself. So, I mean, on the product side, I think there is actually a lot of innovation and fun stuff that we do from the marketing side and how we talk about it. That to me is, what obviously makes me the most excited. And really, we just follow our guests and put the community at the center of the work that we do. This summer, we actually did a really fun dating show concept with the very talented Hannah Berner. I don't know if you've heard of Hannah. She had a Netflix special and she has a podcast she does with her best friend. They came up through reality TV show fame, Summer House, and some of that.
Oh, yes.
She's great.
Okay, I know her. She has a podcast with Paige DeSorbo. I do know.
She sure does. Yes. And I mean, she's watch her because she's hilarious. So funny. And she's all over the place now. But we did this really fun concept around a dating show because we know that a lot of our first dates happen, a lot of first dates happen at Caribou. It's such an approachable space to meet. And so we thought, oh gosh, wouldn't it be funny if we did a dating show? They're all the rage,
That's great.
So we try and have fun with it. And we know it resonated very much with our younger community. We were launching energy drinks. So it was a perfect fit to say, hey, come on into Caribou, have an energy drink, have a fun, it's just a total blind date situation happening. So I think that's it. We just put the community, what we hear from them, what they want. Our social presence is still very much the same too, where it's more of a dialogue, I would say, than, us marketing to the individuals, and hopefully our personality comes through. And really that's what it's all about, because coffee it's emotional as well as very functional.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. That's a fun. Do you have videos that I can go back and look at?
Oh, yeah, on Instagram.
Instagram. Okay. I'm going to go look at them.
They're 2-minute episodes. Yeah. They're really good. My personal favorite is the second episode. I'm just going to say that.
Okay.
You can choose.
No, it's great. I'll go watch that one. That's fun. I was going to ask David, actually, go ahead. I think you've got a question. I saw you come off mute.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say when I was doing some research, I was surprised that there are 800 locations. That's crazy, right? That's a ton. How do you keep how do you tell the employees and educate them on what the brand is, how the brand's evolving, and how they should be ambassadors because that's really, the main touch point that your customers are having?
Yep. Great question. Part of it is that we take team really seriously as a first audience. We talk a lot about team, guest, community in that order, because our team is so invaluable to us. I mean, they're the ones that are not only representing our brand, but they're the ones that are making the magic happen for our guests, right? So I know a lot of companies say it and a lot of brands say it, but for us, it's very intentional. So we have a internal social type platform where we are constantly in touch. We share fun Spark stories as well as news about what's going on with the brand. We, in addition to the training and development and other work that we do, but really the team is super important. Every year we have a really fun general manager conference that we call BooCon for Caribou and convention, and we pull out all the stops and bring everyone into. So we try and celebrate our team as much as possible. We couldn't do it without them for sure.
That's really cool. I was going to ask, not to backtrack us at all, but I just being somebody that's a consumer on Instagram, when I find, a brand that I like, or just brands in general that are putting out new marketing campaigns, things like that, you all seem to know your consumer really well. And I think that's obviously just the hallmark of good marketing in general, right? But just as a personal curiosity, if you put something out and you get like complete mixed reviews, let's say on Instagram, or there's comments that you didn't necessarily expect, how do you approach that? And like, what do you immediately make a change, or you even personally, is it like an instant kind of freak out, or okay, give it a second. It's the internet and the internet is crazy. Like, how do you approach those things?
Yes. Really good question. We tend to err on the side of letting people be themselves, right? Yeah. So we kind of live by that core value too. Yep, we do. But it's funny because we've had some misses very infrequently, but I feel like we're not pushing enough if we don't have some moments where we're all holding our breath. One that was really funny that I'll talk about was when we brought the term girl math to Instagram before Instagram was really ready for it. So we ripped it from TikTok and put it into Instagram. And we had some of our guests who are not on TikTok at the time, this was, year and a half ago, say, shame on you, Caribou. Why are you shaming girls about math? And, we lived this whole moment, right, where we were like, oh gosh, how do we do this? And then what was really interesting.
Boomer.
Yeah. It was like, okay, Gen X. I mean, really, it was just,
they're like, we're offending women. You're like, no, you're missing the point of girl math. This is like telling girls to do whatever they want type of math. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, exactly. Right. So it was a funny moment though, where we had a moment as a marketing team being like, okay, how do we make sure people understand that we weren't actually saying anything critical. We were celebrating, this math. So what was really interesting and what we found is that our community actually jumped in and did the work for us. And I feel like that happens a lot on social too. If brands can just breathe for a second and, you'll start seeing the interaction happen. And then it's really magical because I feel like because we're a friendly brand, it's not usually critical. It's more about, oh, hey, I could see why you would think that, but this is actually what it means. And, so to us, it winds up working itself out a little bit. Obviously, if we really do something that's egregious or offensive, which we haven't, knock on wood, right? We would take a look at that. But I think that's the power of community.
Yeah, I think, and your experience at General Mills, and like you were talking about, even the companies you started before smartphones and social media were a thing. It's just such a volatile place where it can be the most incredible thing ever, and something that you don't expect to go viral goes viral, and then something that you expect, is going to go viral just has like a normal reaction. And so it just feels so, in my mind, as somebody that's in sales and maybe not directly marketing, that just is a very hard job to have, to be able to predict the reactions of your consumers. But I guess that's what makes the best marketers is they really know their consumer well enough that they know what their reactions are going to be.
I wish we could claim that. I mean, we have a really talented content creator who I think is probably the closest thing to the predictor. And he's created, all of the viral videos that you see are from Drew. So shout out to Drew. But also what's fun is to see the reactions when people chime in, and talk about the fact that like marketing team deserves a raise. Like, there's just so much love on social if you can find it too. But we can't predict. We just, we just put the love out there and hope people think that we're as funny as we think we are. I guess that's really it, right?
Yeah, that's great. No, that's good.
I wanted to ask you too about brand versus performance and how you view that. Like people keep saying brand performance, but I don't really know what that means.
I don't use that term.
Yeah,
I don't
it
even.
gives me the ick too.
You can call me a boomer, David.
Yeah, I know. I don't like it. But
Not.
no, I'm curious how how you view, and specifically brand, right? I think most people view performance the same way, right? $1 in, $10 out, you're winning. But yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like, it used to be that there were performance marketers on your team and brand marketers on your team, right? And now it's kind of like, I think that's what you were talking about, this whole combination. At the end of the day, we just look at what makes the company successful, how we can support not only what we do, but how we do it with why we do it. And I think that we look at it more that way than talking about, okay, well, this is a brand initiative versus this is a performance initiative. We talk about supporting the sales cycle. We talk about brand building. We actually are a company that puts driving brand love on our strategic plan every single year and what are the initiatives that are going to do it. But we align more, I would say, on the strategies of how we want to drive our business forward and drive growth and support our franchisees than we actually talk about it in terms of like labels. It's an interesting conversation though, because I think it works for us. I think though that we always talk about what are our goals at the end of it. And I think we just continue to try and do things that get us closer what those goals are, whatever label you want to put on it.
What are you most excited about with everything going on and what you're building? What are those goals and how are you planning on conquering them?
Well, we haven't talked a lot about this part of what we talk about in marketing, but you mentioned it at the very beginning with the intro. We put a lot of love and care and dollars into our ingredients. And so we use like real chocolate chips and real, caramel sauce and real vanilla and some of the things that I think what makes our product taste so good. And I know that sounds kind of like dry and formulaic, but this is where the exciting part comes in, is we get to talk about the fact that, we're a real company using real ingredients. And then we are starting to talk about real dreamy. So it's like this whole idea of like how Caribou can be a portal to the emotional side and the emotional benefits from some very functional things. And so we're having a blast with that creative. I mean, you can see it in the dating show that I was talking about. And we're in the middle of polishing off some new market campaign work as we grow and scale. And so it's just been a blast. I mean, I think I'll always, and maybe it's because of my heritage, but I'll always love that content creation side. That's kind of where I go to as a marketer, because I think it's just where we can play and let others like last. And, not so much at Caribou. We don't really try and make people cry, but like, emote, I guess I'll say that. So that's what I'm most excited about, is just continuing that work that we started last summer with our, dating show and the real dreamy work, and talk about the goodness that we have for the world.
There you go. Well, let's hit the quick question round.
Okay.
All right. Before we hit the quick question round, I got to give one more shout out to Open Fortune. As the famous philosopher Gary Vaynerchuk once said, I only believe in 4 forms of media: influencer marketing, biddable media, the Super Bowl, and Open Fortune. By leveraging the simple yet impactful medium of fortune cookies, you can engage customers across 99% of U.S. zip codes through a network of 47,000 restaurants. Discover the power of Open Fortune today. All right, let's hit it. Person you'd most want to sit down to dinner with, dead or alive?
Michelle Obama.
She's a favorite. We got a lot of Michelle, yeah.
I know, but you know what? I can't pick anyone else. That's not a bad thing. It's a
great answer.
Yeah, she's great.
Favorite city in the world?
Paris.
Is it okay to sleep with socks on?
Yes, if it's cold. I live in Minnesota.
Let's go.
Yes.
David and I are both team socks, and like the rest of our team is like, that's disgusting. You're a psychopath if you sleep with socks on. I'm like, I'm not sleeping with cold feet.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I've heard you guys. I get it.
Favorite romantic comedy?
That's a tough one. I'm going to say Singles.
Best spot to eat in Minnesota or Minneapolis?
Anywhere where Gavin Kaysen is the chef. I love Gavin Kaysen. He's a New Yorker originally, but well, no, he studied.
By way
he worked
of New York.
Yes, by way of New York. Yeah.
Favorite Drake graduate?
Oh, that's a really good question. I can't say the Drake Bulldog, right?
You can say yourself if you can't think of
I'm not going to say myself. I don't. You know what? That's a great. I mean, I have a lot of friends from Drake. I'll just say
shout out to
my friends: Debbie Wells, Aaron Griffin, and Katie Ashton. There you go. Amazing. Those are my favorite Drake grads.
In 40 years from now, what will people be nostalgic for?
I think we'll be nostalgic for. Wow, this is not a fast answer.
No, you're good.
Does it have to be something of this time? Because I feel like sometimes this time is not our best moment, but
share.
No, I think, you know what? The Stanley. I'm going to say the Stanley mug. I feel like it's everywhere.
I like that answer. Everyone's always like the cell phone or something big. I'm like, that's good.
No.
Yeah.
I'm delighted every time I take a sip out of this, dude, and it's still cold and refreshing. So I'm just,
and you even have the accessories. That's good.
Yeah, this is a Caribou one, but yes.
There you go.
So cute.
You get one. All right. Top 3 brands right now doing a good job.
I know, actually, she was just on, but I'm a big Delta fan. I fly it all the time. I just flew it this week. So I'm very appreciative of all the things they do to make their experience great for people who travel often, who are their diamond medallions. I think Athleta is pretty powerful in the fact that they just went full in with B Corp, and in a space where I think it's important to, make sure that we're honoring women, and that, it's a athletic wear it is. So I always really like what Athleta is doing. And then, other than Caribou, I probably should have said Caribou first, but I love what Elf is doing. I mean, I know Corey as the CMO there, and I've had conversations with her, so I love their authenticity and all that they're doing, but I love how they do the work that they do as well.
Do you like Delta's new collaboration with Shake Shack?
I can take it or leave it. I'm not a huge Shake Shack person. I was the original Shake Shack. I gotcha. I know my first reaction was, tastes amazing, might smell a little strong on an airplane. Yeah,
but we'll see.
Totally. It's hilarious.
Okay, sorry, David. I hijacked.
No worries. One thing people don't understand about your job is
how hard it is sometimes. I think, it always looks so fun, right? We market it to make it look fun. But there are days where you're just like, I just got to put my head down and take a nap.
Worst advice. What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
Worst advice I've ever given? Fake it till you make it. Well, both. Fake it till you make it. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in faking anything. I believe that you don't have to hold yourself to perfection, that there is no such thing as failure. That's how I tend to look at it. So it's just only market fit, but I don't like the idea of faking it till you make it.
And then what's the best advice you've been given?
The fact that you only have to win one more time and you lose.
I like
freedom to innovate.
There you go. Well, I got one more. Where can we find you in 10 years?
Well, I would love to be a professional spa goer. So like Miraval, Canyon Ranch.
Oh my God. Yes.
Miamo. So I'm going to say there, but if not there, then hopefully on a beach somewhere.
Wow.
Amazing. Well, we'll do the follow-up episode on the beach. Or
okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Either work for us. Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining us. That was awesome. Really appreciate all your time.
Thank you guys so much. That was a lot of fun.